I've got Dale Michelsohn here, who's a member of the Now Spinning group, and I'm absolutely delighted to have Dale on the Now Spinning podcast. Dale runs the memorial page for the Birmingham Odeon, which was the venue for us Brummies or anybody who was interested in music in the Midlands. It was the venue where every band seemed to make sure it was on their itinerary. So Dale has agreed to come along on the show and talk to me a little bit about his time there, which sounds absolutely fascinating. So Dale, you worked at the Odeon until they stopped having live shows in 1988. When did you actually start to work there?
I started working at the Odeon around about the end of 74. I just left school. I was 15. I kind of kicked out of school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd always been interested in theatre and entertainment. My father was in entertainment. He was a member of the Magic Circle,
wow,
British Magic Circle. So I used to assist him when he used to do his gigs and so on. And I thought that was a really cool sort of job to be doing. So what I did basically, I wrote some letters to all the theatres in Birmingham, and only 2 theatres answered.
Yeah.
One was the Hippodrome to say thanks, but no thanks. And then the Odeon answered. And what had happened was it was run by some very old guys that had been there donkey's years.
Yeah.
There was a team of kind of old technicians that they came from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, you know. And my letter sort of jolted them to be thinking, oh, maybe we need some new blood because we're getting all these rock shows in and so on.
Yeah.
And, you know, it wasn't really their scene. So they called me in for an interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. So I was the youngest on the team. So there was a team of, basically, there were 5 of us that ran the place.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, I started when I was 15. These guys were in their 40s then.
Wow.
Which to me was really old.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Yeah.
Now it's a different story, of course.
Of course, yeah.
And so that's it. So, I mean, I literally started at the bottom, and it's the old cliche. I had to make the tea and sweep the floor and all of those things and do as I was told.
Yeah.
It was all very old school. And they taught me the business basically over a 2-year period.
So how did your role develop? So you were literally like just basically being like go and get this, go and get that at the very beginning. But where did you feel you were being pushed towards? What did you really enjoy doing?
I enjoyed working on the stage. I enjoyed doing the live shows. Part of my, I mean, the theatre was built as cine variety. So, yes, we had a big stage, we had dressing room complexes, but also they showed films.
Yeah.
You probably remember at one time it had the largest screen in the Midlands.
Yes.
This screen was enormous, and I think they said it weighed about 6 ton, the screen.
Wow.
And it was spread across 5 counterweight systems. And it was counterweighted, so you could just pull and it would go up. Come down. So it was a big screen. So when we didn't have live shows, we were showing movies. So during my 2-year period, they trained me in, projecting films, how to edit films. But I didn't really go for that. I didn't like it very much. My heart was on the stage. I wanted to be involved with the live stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, that became more and more. And the films became less and less. Because as the theatre through the early 80s, I mean, it was almost back-to-back shows every day.
Yeah, I remember myself going into the Odeon entrance during my lunch hour, wherever I was working, and just looking to see who was coming on next and see the advance tickets, you know.
That's right.
Even before Melody Maker or Sounds announced who was coming around, it seemed to be that the Birmingham Odeon seemed to know way in advance who might be turning up.
Absolutely, of course.
It was fantastic.
I mean, most of these concerts were planned in advance, of course.
Yeah. So nowadays we're so used to being able to see a celebrity or rock band's kind of social media channels, and you can even send a tweet or even get them to interact with you. Back then, they were more mysterious in the way that unless you wrote to the music paper or belonged to a fan club, and even then it was probably an in-between person who spoke back to you. So you were meeting all of these stars of the day. Were you starstruck?
Never. Funny thing, never. And even now, even less now, if I was at all. I mean, at my time in life now, it's just a job, and they're people. There's good, you meet good and bad people, and it's the same with these stars.
Yeah.
There's some decent ones. There's some very cantankerous ones.
Yeah.
I was never starstruck, never.
Because on your on the Birmingham Odeon memorial page, I remember you did a post about Mark Bolan, who played there in 1972, and you mentioned that he got paid something like £1,780 for his performance.
Yes.
Back then, that was such a lot of money. I mean, what did that affect? I mean, they were still young people themselves, being around people like that. Because I know that was just before you started there, but you did see him on the 74 tour. Is that right?
I saw the 74 tour.
Yeah.
And I was actually a member of the audience.
And
then shortly after, I was behind the stage. Very, very strange. I never imagined, when I was stood there watching TRex, I never imagined that I would be behind the scenes there in just a few months.
Yeah.
It was, I guess it was a lot of money. On the other hand, things were different in the business in those days. Bands relied, the tours were really to promote the records. It's a whole new business today. So of course the money that was made was on the record sales. I think today it's reversed now.
Yeah, you're right.
The emphasis is on touring, so they make their money from the touring, and I think in many ways the record sales are secondary. Yeah,
it's amazing how that's changed. And another big event, because I remember, although I didn't go to it and I wasn't a fan of the Bay City Rollers, I remember my friends talking about it. And my older cousin said he'd gone into Birmingham on this particular day and he didn't understand what was going on because there was all of these thousands of kids running around dressed in tartan. What? And you were there.
I was there, and let it be on record, I am also not a Bay City Rollers fan. But yes, I was there. That was one of my first shows, one of my earliest recollections. It was madness, and especially for me, young, just out of school, I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, okay, I was at the TRex gig in '74. That was crazy. I mean, almost the end of the glam rock period.
Yeah.
Screaming like you've never heard. I don't know whether you maybe you were there. I don't know.
No, I wasn't at that one.
I mean, you couldn't hear the band play. You've heard all the old stories about when the Beatles played live, and they said themselves that they couldn't even hear themselves sing or play. It was literally like that being in the audience. And I remember my ears were ringing for 4 days afterwards.
Wow.
The concert. That doesn't happen anymore because I'm half deaf because of this business. But then the Bay City Rollers came, and that was at the end of the glam rock period, I think. And there was still that insane hysteria in the audience, and it was just crazy. In those days, when I first started, the Odeon stage was a little bit different. I don't know whether you remember, but the front of the stage down to the audience had a slope.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And we used to have to build this crash barrier every gig across the front of this slope, stop the fans from running up. And I remember at the end of the show, you could hardly walk on the stage because of the amount of memorabilia and gifts that the fans had thrown on the stage to the band.
Wow.
Quite incredible. Literally, we were shoveling this stuff into big bags and carting it back. And what was it? It was from cuddly toys, jewellery.
Good God.
Masses of letters, love letters.
Yeah.
back in those days, it was a more naive world.
Yeah.
Girls' phone numbers.
Yeah.
You know, money. They put money into the envelopes. I mean, we had a field day backstage because the bands weren't interested in this stuff. They never even touched it. They didn't want this, you know.
Yeah.
So it was our job to clean it all away. So we had a great time opening the envelopes and reading the silly love letters from the little teeny boppers. And there's a few pints out of the loose change. You know. So it was insane. And I remember I lived at home in those days with my father, and I remember taking a bag of this junk home, and he was like amazed. He couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
He thought the world had gone insane.
Well, while all that was going on, the Odeon was also the venue for all the serious rock bands, wasn't it? The first time I ever went was probably just before you started, which is in May 1974 when I saw Deep Purple.
Deep Purple, just before.
That was my first ever gig. And then, of course, once I got the bug, buying Sounds and Enemy, although sometimes we went to the town hall, it was when the band was on at the Odeon, you felt like they'd arrived. If they could fill the Odeon, that was where it was.
Absolutely.
I mean, what key bands can you remember from that when you thought,
I've forgotten more than I can remember because it's been a lot of years. But there is a specific period of that time that I remember really well. And I think it's that early period. It's from I'd say from 75 up to about 79. That was my favorite period for me, because I saw a lot of bands that I really loved, and I felt sort of honoured to sort of see them and work with them as well. I wasn't starstruck, but there were certain artists I was slightly in awe of. I think that's a different thing.
Yes, yeah.
Because they were my heroes, and I thought, oh, wow, this is just, this is amazing. Here I am, standing in front of Mark Bolan, like yourself, like many others, he was our schoolboy sort of hero. Yeah. And to be standing in front of him, I never felt starstruck, but I was like, there's the man. This is fabulous. So we had a lot of what you call serious music, and things that I remember. I mean, particular ones that stand out: Bob Marley and the Wailers, ABBA. Is ABBA serious? Yes, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
It certainly is here.
Yeah.
Because ABBA, for example, that was the first British tour. That was the first date of the first British tour.
Wow.
And that's actually gone down in history to the extent that only a couple of years ago, the BBC tracked me down.
Oh, yeah.
They tracked me down. And they wanted me to appear on TV and give an interview. But of course, the irony is that I now live in Stockholm, ABBA land.
Yeah.
In fact, I work just over the road from the ABBA Museum.
Gosh.
You can virtually hear the music playing in the street from here. But they wanted me to go on TV and do an interview. And I had to tell them, well, I'm sorry, I can't, because I live in Stockholm now. So they set up a live radio link, and I had to do it over the telephone. And it was in all the newspapers. I think you may find references to it on my Birmingham Odeon memorial.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. So that was a big thing. Alex Harvey band for me. I adored Alex.
Oh, yeah.
I think I worked on 3 Alex Harvey band gigs. I mean, I thought it was amazing. The theatricals, I loved the music. And so I was quite involved with that.
How was your role developing around this time? What was your role on the stage?
I was a stage technician. And like I say, I was the youngest of a team of 5, the old guys.
Yeah.
So I think in many ways, I may have been developing quicker than them, because I had more of an aptitude for the young scene.
Yeah.
The bands, I mean, they weren't interested in that. And the thing is, technology was rapidly advancing, and it was beyond the old guys that I worked with. So it was interesting to learn all the new technology and so on.
Because were a lot of bands also bringing ever more elaborate light shows and trying to fit it
That's
into
right.
it? Yeah.
But, I mean, when I first started there, it was quite incredible. Bands used to just bring on they were like big boxes with lids on, and you took off the lids, and there was like a genie tower inside that was pumped up by compressed air.
Yeah.
Or CO2 or whatever. And inside there was just a lighting frame.
Yeah.
There'd be like 12 par cans, 12 lamps on in various colours. And there'd be one in the middle, one on each side. They were nicknamed trees.
Yeah.
And up they went because they looked like trees, but pointed in the general direction. That was it. But we went from that very, very rapidly to enormous and very elaborate lighting shows. From laser shows, which back then was a new thing.
That'd be the Blue Oyster Cult. I remember using
the
laser.
Blue Oyster Cult, yeah, that was probably the first really big laser show.
Yeah,
and that was enormous. I don't know whether you were at that gig.
I was at that one. Yeah,
so you remember the laser show?
Yeah,
It was
very
fabulous.
much.
Absolutely
stunning.
Today, I think we're blinded with science. We're entertained to death today, I think, with the technology that we look through. But for us back then, I mean, that was just stunning, you know.
Yeah. Were you there for the Rainbow gig with that when?
Yes, the Rainbow gig. That's one I was going to mention. And of course, I was very young and naive and eager to learn. And I remember that gig incredibly well because that enormous rainbow that was built in sections. One of my jobs was because I was the kid, I had to climb over the thing, dragging lighting cables.
Oh my God.
It was very high.
Yeah.
And I can still remember being extremely nervous, you know. See, this is the thing. I talked to my colleagues here today. There was no health and safety in that.
No.
We just did whatever. And when I think back at some of the jobs that I actually did do, it horrifies me. You know, it really does. But yeah, that was one of them, climbing over the rainbow, plugging that in. So I remember that very well. That was a great gig. I really liked that.
Yeah. I remember it being so loud as well.
Yeah. Once again, no health and safety. That's why my ears today they're destroyed. I mean, it's just incredible the volume of sound that we used to stand and listen to. You know?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That leads me into another question I've got is that because at that particular Rainbow gig, that was the first time I was with a friend who said, shall we go backstage and try and see if we can meet anybody? And we went down the side of the Odeon, waited. And we, of course, we didn't meet Rainbow, but Robert Plant was in the wings and he came out and walked us to our bus stop, which I've mentioned on the Now Spinning website. But did you get many people coming down and trying to get in backstage and meet the bands?
Yes, almost every gig.
Yeah,
there was always the stage door Johnnies, as they're fondly referred to in the business.
Yeah,
I don't know where that came from, but the stage door Johnnies. Every gig they were trying to get in, and of course it was virtually impossible. There were a few exceptions. For example, much to the annoyance of the management, artists like Lemmy. He was a character. He was a character. I mean, he would befriend anybody.
Yeah.
And he used to let them all in. And because there would be terrific arguments with the security backstage.
Yeah.
Oh, I want them in, in the dressing room. Come on in and have a can of beer.
Yeah.
So there was always crowds of denim-clad kids, in the dressing room chatting with Lemmy and having a beer or whatever they were drinking. So, but I mean, generally, it was very difficult. It was it was impossible to get in backstage, really.
Yeah, I can personally vouch for the fact I never got in once.
You didn't know me then.
Yeah, I also remember at the time as the Odeon became the place to go. I remember when Genesis were booked, and the people queued the night before and stepped in the street to get tickets.
Well, I mean, I remember queuing for tickets for the TRex gig in '74 that we talked about, and sleeping in the street.
Wow.
Never again.
No.
Thankfully. But yeah, but they used to do that. And some queues they went all the way around the block, didn't they? Went all the way down to New Street Station.
That's right. I remember the Genesis one doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the poor kids at the back, of course, they haven't got a cat in hell's chance of getting a ticket. I mean, the Odeon, there's only there are around about 3,000 seats, which by today's standards, that's nothing really.
No.
But back then it was a good size, you know.
It was seen as the step up from the town hall, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah,
definitely. And because you mentioned there was no health and safety, but there were some bands like AC/DC with Angus going into the audience on the back of some.
Mm-hmm.
That must. I mean, nowadays that cause all sorts of headaches of people trying to work out.
Really, yeah.
But no one thought about it then.
No, I remember that one time. I think he was on Scott's shoulders, and me and my colleagues had to walk in front of them and push the crowd out of the way. I didn't like jobs like that. I didn't like to go down into the audience, really, you know. But I can remember that quite well. Quite incredible today.
Yeah. I was at that. I think that would be 78. I think.
Yeah, maybe I pushed you out of the way. I don't know. Yeah.
So, which bands did you have any bands arrive with lighting rigs or equipment where they hadn't quite thought it through, or it was very difficult to get it to fit in? What was the most elaborate setup?
No, not in that sense. I mean, not that they hadn't thought it through. Everything was thought through. Everything was planned down to the finest detail in advance, of course.
Uh-huh.
Whether or not the gig fit into a venue is another story. Even today, this happens. We have the same here where I'm working. That they've got a set idea and lights and scenography, scenery and stuff. But sometimes that you have to adapt to fit the venue. So you take a bit away here or move it round, or
you
have to adapt. So sometimes some of the lighting systems, maybe they had to drop a few parts off or whatever. But usually it fit in. You know, one of the biggest things that I remember was Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh yeah.
That for those days, for the Odeon, that was enormous. That was a huge show for us, and we struggled with that. It took a lot of adapting to fit that in. I don't know whether you remember. They used to have this huge spaceship.
Yes, I do.
That used to fly up above, and they were inside it, and it would come down, and there would be lights and
wow, incredible!
High ice and smoke. The doors would open, and out the band would come. That took a bit of doing. We had to have extra electricity plumbed in for that gig.
Wow!
And we were just on the limits for that concert because there was so many lights. And the irony is that just as the concert finished and the lights went down, one of the 400 amp fuses actually blew. So we lost all power in the theatre.
Oh gosh!
There was a big panic for me and the chief to run down and try and change this fuse. Once again, health and safety, I would not be allowed to do that today.
No.
Because I'm not a qualified electrician.
Yeah.
But I remember him saying, stand back, I've got to push this big fuse in. And he pushed it in with a stick.
Yeah.
And the big sparks came out and I was like, oh, But yeah, that was a very big show. Then I remember ZZ Top coming.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first gigs that utilised Vari lights.
Oh yeah.
In a big way. We'd had one or two come with gigs. And back in those days, the Vari lights, because, it was American.
Yeah.
They actually toured with their own technicians and so on. We weren't allowed to touch any of that equipment.
Uh-huh.
It's different today. And they had quite a big rig of Vari lights. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Wow.
So that was ZZ Top.
But they didn't bring any cattle or cactuses on that tour.
I think they had a few fake cactuses, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you see that concert?
I didn't see that one particular one. No, I didn't see that particular one.
Yeah.
But during this time, you've got, as you mentioned before, you've got Rainbow, Black Sabbath, Van Halen, and Queen.
Yeah. Queen.
Yeah.
Queen, amazing. Two nights with Queen.
When was that? When did Queen play there? Can you remember?
When was that? December 75, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was at the Bohemian Rhapsody.
That's right.
The opera, wasn't it?
Yeah. In fact, there's a pretty, just after that, they were at the Hammersmith Odeon and they filmed that concert.
That's right, yeah.
I think you might find it on YouTube. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you watch that, it might as well be the Birmingham Odeon. It's identical. So that's what you get. And that's what I did. I had, one of my recollections is I had a little job at the beginning of that show. The stage is in black.
Yeah.
And Freddie is standing behind a white screen where so he's silhouetted with a lamp behind.
Yeah.
So my job was to, one on each side, we had to wheel that screen off.
Yeah.
When the lights went down, and then the band kicked in and all the hell was let loose, the lights came up, and I tripped over on the, I think it was the second one. I fell over something in the darkness and was dragged off very rapidly by a couple of roadies by my arms into the wings.
In case you found yourself under all the lights and on stage.
Yeah, as the lights came up. So I remember that very well, very well. What else was there from that period? Pal, Pace Ashton.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That was an interesting sort of, that was an interesting gig. And of course, the tour was filmed for their, they made a movie called Lifespan.
Yes, yeah, I've got it on DVD, yeah, but it's
you'll see me on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you'll see a brief glimpse of me coming down one of the ramps on the truck, and then you see all the old guys I work with pushing stuff in, and then you see us on stage building everything.
Oh, brilliant! I'll have to
look at that. Yeah,
I'll have to look at that.
Very young, and I have a lot of hair as well. So.
Yeah, didn't we all?
Yeah, didn't we all? Yeah. So that was an interesting show, I think. Didn't really take off that.
No, didn't know.
No. Who else do I remember? Which Todd Rundgren's Utopia. That's what converted me into a mega Todd Rundgren fan.
Oh, fantastic!
Because nobody knew who he was. I'd never heard of him.
Yeah.
We thought it was a ballet company or something.
Yeah.
What could this be? But he just blew me away. Just incredible. I went straight out the next day and bought whatever I could find. And I've been a fan ever since, you know.
Were there any bands who kind of misjudged their popularity or booked the Odeon and there wasn't as many tickets sold as they would have hoped? Because
many. Some of them you wouldn't think. I mean, especially back in the mid 70s. I remember we did a Donovan gig.
Yeah.
I think he sold about 30 tickets.
Wow.
And quite remarkably, it was in the days of the slope on the front of the stage.
Yeah.
The ticket sales were so poor that it was just him and an acoustic guitar. So he sat on a bar stool in the middle of the stage and he called the audience up on stage and they sat cross-legged around him.
It's truth.
When would that ever happen today?
No.
Never.
No.
Quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Very intimate little sort of personal gig he did for them.
Yeah.
Ticket sales were appalling. Electric Light Orchestra, before they became mega big.
Yeah.
We did a tour early 75. I think they slipped the gig in as a last minute thing.
Yeah.
It didn't sell very well at all. It's very poor. Then, of course, shortly afterwards, they exploded. I mean, they were huge, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing bands like the Ian Gillan Band when they first started out and it was about half full. I remember Budgie, the Welsh group, thinking they could go up from being usually playing the town hall, and there wasn't many people there.
It didn't work.
I remember going to see Roy Gallagher, and the band the van broke down or something, and he turned up on his own with just an acoustic guitar and did it just on his own.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there were some fantastic times. And once we get to the 80s, of course, as you said earlier, the Birmingham Odeon then was literally night after night, a live venue, wasn't it?
Yes.
Full on.
Back to back. Incredible.
So what happened towards 1988 when they decided not to do anymore? What happened?
Well, do we really know the truth? But the fact is that the film industry was having a bit of a resurgence then. I mean, you got the likes of Star Wars and all those mega films. Incidentally, the PAL film, Lifespan, I believe that was shown as a support film to The Empire Strikes Back, was it? The first Star Wars.
Really?
Film.
Wow.
Yeah, at the Odeon Queensway.
Yeah.
But the film industry was picking up. And we'd got a lot of, people don't realise this, that we got a lot of opposition for having live concerts at the Odeon from the Birmingham Council.
I didn't know that.
It had always been like that from the mid-70s onwards. They were very opposed to it. They didn't like it. They didn't like all the traffic, the trucks. They didn't like all the queues, all the bands. They caused a lot of trouble for us in one way or another, especially via the fire chief. I mean, it became, they were visiting every gig almost and throwing their weight around and demanding that we tie the PA down and we drop the safety curtain twice and all of this. So they were slowly making our lives a bit of a misery. And the film industry was picking up. So in the rank organisation's infinite wisdom, they decided that they should scrap the live shows and concentrate on films. And they converted the place into I don't know how many multiplex, 6 or 8 cinemas in the building now, I think. A very sad day for all of us. We were told just out of the blue.
Oh, really?
With very little warning, that in a couple of months' time, that was it. It's the end, guys. Go back to showing movies. I mean, I couldn't tolerate that. So I quit.
Did you do? Did you go? Is that when you went to the Alexander Theatre after that? Was it?
That's when I moved to the Alex. I still desired that being on a stage. You know, I wanted to do the live stuff, and I couldn't imagine sitting up in the projection room showing films hour after hour. You know, it just wasn't me. So I quit there and then. Very sad day.
Yeah.
But, you know, life goes on. That's progress.
Well, and for touring bands and for agents and record labels and PR companies, that was a disaster
for Birmingham.
Yeah,
and of course all the fans. It was a very, very sad day.
Yeah,
I don't know whether you remember the petitions. It was ongoing for months. The petitions. There were people petitioning to keep it live. The Birmingham Mail did a keep it live.
I do remember that.
With Paul Cole, he wrote a lot of stuff about keeping it live. It was endorsed by a lot of artists, Meat Loaf and.
Well, it was the right size venue for certain bands, wasn't it?
Because exactly. Yeah, it was perfect.
As much as they tried to push the bigger bands into the NEC and places like that, the sound was never good. People didn't like it. It wasn't as intimate, and the Odeon had something about it.
Incidentally, the NEC probably was the start of the downfall for the Odeon. The reason for that is that instead of bands playing 2, 3, 4 nights at the Odeon, they could play one night at the NEC for even more ticket sales. So, of course, the arenas destroyed it for the smaller venues.
Yeah, true.
So I would say that was probably the beginning of it. But no, they closed and they show films today. And I went over to the Alex and continued there. But that was more of theatre.
Theatre, yeah.
Yeah.
So how long did you stay at the Alex for, and how did you find yourself in Sweden?
Well, I was the job that I had at the Alex was the deputy chief technician. Sounds very glamorous, but it's just basically the same I was doing at the Odeon. But they like to give you titles in traditional theatre, you know.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I learned another aspect of theatrical.
Yeah.
Different techniques, of course, because the English theatre it's very stuck in its ways. It's very traditional. So it was interesting to learn that. And then what happened was there was a big theatre entrepreneur called Mark Furness. We did a show called Dangerous Obsession. Simon Ward is a name from the past.
Yeah.
He started it. And then Mark Furness decided that he would do a slimmed down version, and he wanted to send it to Stockholm.
Right.
Because back in those days, there was an English theatre company based in Stockholm. Very, very small thing, you know. So my colleague, a friend of mine that was a sort of a touring guy, he'd lost his driving license, and he wanted me to go with him. And he said it would be a lot of fun. I didn't even know where Stockholm was, you know. So I was like, oh, yeah, no, come on, it's going to be a lot of fun. You know? So I said yes. So off we went with this van, packed with stuff, and ended up in Stockholm. And while I was working here, I think we did about a week here.
Yeah,
I met a girl.
Oh yeah,
Swedish girl.
Yeah,
and that's the reason I ended up in Stockholm. I mean, it was backwards and forwards all the time.
Of course, yeah.
Something's got to change. I wasn't particularly very happy at the Alex.
No.
There's an old saying in the theatre business, it can be a hard act to follow. And life was a bit of a hard act to follow for me at the time after working at the Odeon.
Yeah.
Because that's where my heart was. That's where the love was. I loved the rock and roll, the rock bands and the excitement of that. And of course, that had all gone.
Yeah.
And even though I had an interesting period at the Alex, my heart wasn't in it. So I thought a change is as good as a rest, or whatever you say. So I decided to move over here and take my chances. And I'm still here. And that was 30 years ago.
Wow. So what's your current role then? Because I can see all the rock and roll posters behind you and everything. You're still involved with music.
Yeah, I put those up to stop the reflection of the mirror and everything.
Well, they're very good. Yeah. King Crimson. Yeah.
Yeah, these are gigs that we've had here or next to the theatre next door. Virtually the same. I'm what they call the stage manager.
Yeah.
Here. So this is a big venue in the middle of Stockholm, an open air venue.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's a place called Skansen, and it's an open air museum, working museum. Think of the Black Country Museum.
Yeah.
But this is much bigger, and it's a little more rural. It's supposed to represent Sweden in miniature.
Yeah.
And so it's a big park, very big park. There are a lot of old houses. There's a sort of a zoo, a farm, and there's lots of small there's a Tivoli Park. There's lots of small venues where we have gigs and things. The one I run all of them, but the main one is the large one.
Yeah.
It's called Solid Stage, and we have a lot of bands and a lot of TV productions on this stage. We've just finished one annual TV production that we do, which runs about for 8 weeks. It finished on Tuesday, so we're clearing up the mess today.
Yeah.
So I look after all that.
Wow.
So I'm basically still in this.
You're still doing it.
Still doing it.
Yeah, fantastic.
I have a couple of years left, but there's life in the old dog yet.
Yeah, brilliant. So when did you set up the memorial page for the Birmingham Odeon? What was your inspiration?
Well, the irony is I didn't set that page up. That it was set up by one of the fans, and I stumbled across it by accident. I don't know how long ago now. What could it be? 10 years ago?
Oh, wow. Gosh.
And of course, it was patently obvious I knew more about the Odeon than anybody else
on earth.
And this guy said to me that I think there were just like 30 people on it,
Yeah.
And this guy said to me, listen, Dale, I'm going to hand this over to you. I haven't got a clue. It's yours. Do what you will with it. So he named it the Birmingham Odeon Memorial. And I thought, well, that's a cool name. I like that. Why not? Why not? So we set a particular time period. And it's from the day it was built, 1937, until the end of the live shows. That's the time period.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the most.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really like about it is the fact that you do have a lot of stuff that goes back to when it first started. The really glamorous times of how grand it was as a building in the late 30s, 40s, and 50s.
I'm interested in that. I'm interested in the history of these places. I'm interested in theatre.
Yeah.
So that is extremely interesting and valuable information for me to seek out that kind of stuff. And I've got various bits of memorabilia that I've collected over the years relating to that. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's a nice balance. It puts things into a perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just about rock and roll,
No. Well, have you been back to the Birmingham Odeon since it closed?
Yeah. I've been back a couple of times. One time I met an old friend who's sadly died now that still worked there. So we went for a little tour and we went backstage. And it was heart-wrenching, really. A very strange experience, because I can tell you now that part of the stage you can't access anymore, because half of the stage there is a big wall, and that is one of the cinemas.
Yeah.
But the stage left side, where all the ropes are and where the old Grandmaster lighting board is, backstage door, the scene dock where you took stuff in and out, that's still there.
Yeah.
And the dressing rooms backstage, it was very bizarre. I mean, they looked like from the day that we turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked out. That's what they look like.
Wow.
Apart from a thick layer of dust, they're virtually the same. And I went onto the stage and I found all our old rooms that we had under the stage. It was my staff room, and it was very bizarre. Went into that room, and there were all our old lockers that we used to put our coats and things.
Oh, wow.
With all the backstage passes on the doors, just there with stuff still in the lockers that we'd left.
Yeah.
I mean, this is since 1988. So it was very weird feeling I had. But very sad to see.
Yeah, well, there's so many memories, especially for you.
Yeah, and I realised then this will never be, back to its grand theatre days. Not a chance.
No. Well, thanks very much, Dale. That's been really interesting.
I could talk all day.
No, it's fantastic. And I mean, both of us have shared so many concerts there, but obviously you were actually there day after day.
Yeah.
And it'll be great for people.
We very likely walk past each other, and how would we know? But there you go.
Well, I shall have another watch of the Lifespan video to see if I can see
just catch a glimpse of me
coming down the ramps. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thanks very much, Dale. That's fantastic.
I love the group. The Now Spinning. It's amazing. Really.
Thank you.
I wish I could contribute more, but
no. Well, you're obviously very busy. People want to get visit the memorial page. Do you know the address?
I think they have to just search for it on Facebook.
I'll put it on the bottom.
You can put Birmingham Odeon Memorial. You'll find it. You'll find it. Yeah, brilliant.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, Dale, and I'll see you on the group. Thank you.